Great, folks. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. So this will be our final bi-weekly meeting for this year. And since releasing on August 16th, our first 0.3 version, we've come a long way. And today we're going to talk about 0.7 release. For some reason, my camera is doing something, so I tried turning it on.
Yeah. You look like a total green screen.
Oh, okay. I'll continue. Anyway, Shannon will be demoing it. So a little bit of updates from the community side. So again, we are really thrilled to see the community growing, new members coming in and contributing patches and asking feature requests, trying out OpenMetadata and doing POCs, and some of them are actually going into production. That's actually really exciting for the community as well as the project. So a little bit of like number sharing here is like we have 80 plus new members coming into Slack for the past month, and around 330 plus commits are merged into 0.7 release. So we are keeping up with pace. And in total, 31 plus contributors provided, either code contributions, documentation. So it's all really, great that, to see the community growing and thriving. So that's about the community update. With that, what we're going to do here is to do, high level kind of demo of the features, including the UI changes that we have done and the new connectors, new entities, new integration that we added. So with that, I'm going to throw it to Shannon, who can do the demo.
Okay, great. Thanks, Harsha. Can everyone see my screen okay? Is the font big enough? Okay, great. Okay, so the 0.7 release is what I'm going to go over today with some help from Alberto. And just to give you a quick overview of the new features that we'll be touching on. First, there's a new home screen that enables you to get an even clearer view of your data all in one place. The new home screen features an activity feed that enables you to view a summary of data change events. In addition, admins can now view a list of users and manage admin privileges. There are a few new lineage view improvements that we're going to take a look at. We have a new DBT integration that enables users to see what models are being used to generate tables, and some storage location updates that Alberto will demo for us. Finally, we've got some updates to the Elasticsearch support. We have support for SSL-enabled Elasticsearch, and I'm going to demo automated indexing workflows at this point. So no need to manually index metadata that's been adjusted anymore. Finally, there are a number of new connectors that we'll touch on briefly at the end. So let's first take a look at the new home screen. So here it is. We have access from this screen to all our data. Can click through and see everything that you're familiar with if you've used OpenMetadata to this point. We also have a list of recently viewed assets and recent search terms. So searches that you've recently submitted are available here. You can click through and reissue those searches at any point. Then on this screen, as it's becoming increasingly a launch pad for you in your exploration of your data, you have access to all of your data here. This is data that you have been designated as the owner for, or data that you've claimed ownership for, as well as any data that you are following to get updates on changes and that sort of thing. All of these, of course, are clickable, allowing you to leap off at any point from data that you've previously explored from a variety of different views. Okay, so the big picture feature here with the changes to the home screen really have to do with the activity feed. All changes to data are reflected here and sorted with most recent changes at the top. And you can get a summary as you move back in time as to which change events occurred and on which dates. So the entities in this view are clickable, including tables, dashboards, team names, etc. And we have activity feeds for all data, as we're looking at here. You can also view a feed filtering change events just for data for which you're an owner. And in this case, if I click through fact session and see that I am in fact the owner for this table. There's also a feed for the data that I'm following. So changes to any assets listed in the following section here of the home screen would be reflected in this feed, the following feed. Here we can see that I am in fact following this feed, this table. One other update we've made in 0.7 is related to changes and versioning. Specifically, we're making major version changes for backward incompatible changes more visible. So if I take a look at dim address and look at the versions for this particular table, I can see that we went from version 0.1 to version 1.1 because we deleted a column in this table, thus creating a backward incompatible change. So backward incompatible changes are reflected as major version changes, and we're now flagging those both with some additional colorization, orange, red, as well as labeling them as a major version change. Okay, so that's an overview of the home screen updates featuring the activity feed. Now let's look, before I turn to the next feature, are there questions that we should address? Okay, if at any point you do have questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. Okay, so now let's look at some user management additions in 0.7. So if you are an admin starting in this release, you can view all users in your OpenMetadata deployment by going from settings to users. From here, an admin can view the full list of users. You can filter users by team or view the list of OpenMetadata admins. So I should point out that these users are dummy users at this point, so we're not, in fact, revealing email addresses. You can also search for users by name. Okay, and if I view the details for a user, I can get some information about which teams the user is on. But I can also make this user an admin. They'll now appear in the admins tab. And then if I need to for any reason, I can also go back and dismiss a user as an admin. Okay, So now let's turn to a discussion of some updates to lineage views in OpenMetadata. Okay, taking a look at lineage views, we see the graph that we've had for a couple of releases now, but there are a couple of additions. For tables in a lineage graph, we can now expand the node for that table to get a summary of all of the tables, all of the columns within that table. In addition, for graphs that are a little bit larger, we have these expansion arrows. So I can expand my current view of the graph to include further paths within the lineage graph for a given set of assets. Okay, continuing down the lineage path, in 0.7, we've added an integration for DBT that enables you to see what models are being used to generate tables. So a DBT model provides transformation logic that creates a table from raw data. While Lineage tells us broadly what data a table was generated from, the DBT model provides specifics. In this release, for all tables produced using a DBT model, that model is accessible from this tab, from the DBT tab, in the table view. So from this, we can determine what tables the orders table in this database is created from, and specifically how that data is modeled based on this DBT model. Okay. All right. At this point, I'm going to turn it to Alberto.
Shannon,
yeah, go ahead.
A quick comment. So I think DBT integration is work in progress. One other feature that we are also doing is if the DBT model is documented, that documentation is carried forward for both the columns and the table. So some of the descriptions that you're seeing in terms of status is coming right out of DBT model. So that way, you're carrying forward all the descriptions that you have, with the DBT model.
Great, thanks, Suresh. Okay, Alberto, I will stop sharing so you can share.
Thank you, Shannon. Hi, everybody. So I will start sharing my computer. Yeah, so is everybody seeing my browser? Okay. So hi, everybody. So I will tell you more about another feature that we have developed in this release of OpenMetadata, and is the filtering by database. So let's start from the home page. If I search for something containing row, for example, then I press enter, I will get 10 results, and we know that facets are very useful to reduce your number of results so that you immediately get the data that is relevant for you. And now we are providing the information that is the database containing that table, as you can see here. And we can also filter in the sidebar on the left only the tables or the assets if the results containing other assets like topics and dashboards. Actually, it's only tables, sorry, allow me to correct me. Yeah, so you can filter by database. And you can also combine this filtering with the other facets that you have on the left side. Another feature that we have added is the two new entities, the storage service and the location entity. So these two entities are very useful for data lakes. They are work in progress right now, so there is no user interface yet. And I will just demo the API, and we would like to get the feedback of the community so that we can develop these entities in the right direction. So the idea is that many of us are managing the data lakes, maybe with Glue, maybe with a Hive Metastore. And as you know, you have two different environments. One is the table environment, where people talk about tables, databases, and the other is the distributed file system, or the object storage, where actually you talk about S3 path or Google Cloud Storage path or HDFS paths. And so we have now here, let me show you, if I start from the Explorer, in the Glue connector, we have implemented the extraction of the location information. So every time you will ingest tables from the AWS Glue Metastore, you will also save in OpenMetadata what is the location of the table. And one of the things that you can do with this information, and we will add more metadata in the future, and we'll also add the location also to the Hive Metastore, for example, is the governance in a data mesh setup. So imagine your normal data lake probably will contain many buckets, many locations, and the governance is useful like divide and conquer. You will divide this huge amount of location in different business units, and every business unit will be authorized to do a specific operation that you decide. So you need a repository where you can figure out who is the owner of that section of the data lake, so that you can allow or deny an operation. And the operation can be the retention time or can be the creation of a table in the Glue catalog and stuff like that. So now I will switch to IntelliJ. So here I will show you how to use our REST API. And let's go step by step. So with this API, we are invoking the collection tables by name. And then the parameter we need to pass is the service.database.table. And then fields is another parameter where we can specify, we can ask to OpenMetadata, please give us also the location metadata about this table. So if I run it, starting from the top, this is the usual answer you get from the REST API. Everything that you see in the web interface can be also obtained through REST API calls. And this is our schema for a table. Then, of course, we have the columns, the database, the service, and here you can see there is the location. So we are following the convention that we are using also for tables. So the full qualified name for this entity is the name of the service concatenated with the name of the entity with a dot. Now, after executing this query, I capture the result, the UUID for the location, and I execute the next query, the next HTTP request, that is, this time, let's use the collection locations and give me all the information about this location with this ID. Okay, starting from the top, very similar to the table, but the service is a different service. It's not a database service, it's a storage service. And the other thing we can see, the location as a type that can help us to understand what kind of location we're talking about. So right now we have defined table, database, prefix, and bucket. So we have already implemented the connector for AWS that will extract all the buckets in your AWS account so that you can assign ownership and start the governance. Then there are tables and database that they have location in the Hive Metastore. And then, of course, in the data lake, you can put backups, you can put any kind of data, images that are not necessarily tabular data. So for that, we will use the location type prefix. Now, how can we implement the governance? So the tricky part of a data lake, especially in a big company, can be the governance. So let's imagine that in our sandbox environment, we have just 4 buckets that I have written here in this comment for your convenience. So these buckets are the glue bucket, the bucket A, the bucket B, and the bucket A that contains actually a specific prefix. Now, I can check if I can do an operation on this prefix, checking the ownership, but I don't want to provide the ownership to all the prefixes that you can find in a data lake, because the amount of entities is huge. So we can imagine a hierarchy here, and we can say, if you don't have a clear ownership here, then walk the folder containing this prefix until you find a owner, and then decide based on that owner if he matches with the user that wants to do the operation. Now, the challenge is that in a data lake with a normal catalog API, you can just list all the entities in a service, and this would be very inefficient. So here we have just 4 entities. Imagine if you have thousands of buckets and location and databases, it will take too long. So we have designed, so I will first run this API for you so that you see that you will return 4 results. But you can imagine here it would be 4,000. So with the pagination and all the complexity of implementing this kind of governance. So we design another API that is actually called prefixes. And this API is smarter. It's saying, just give me the entity where you want to implement the governance. I will give you all the entities that are a parent of that entity. And this, in this case, it will be just bucket A. And for convenience, we also put the entity itself so that you make only one call and you get all the owners. So what we want to have is only 2 results instead of 4. But in reality, it would be 2 results instead of 4,000. So let me run for you this API. And my token expired just now. So I will just use the recorded version that is here. And this will give you 2 results. Apologies for the token that expired right now. So back to you, Shannon.
So quick question. This is also something that can be used for external tables that are stored in HDFS, things like that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks, Alberto. The last demo I want to do has to do with our Elasticsearch updates. So the first thing that I'll do is just mention that we've added support for SSL-enabled Elasticsearch, and this includes self-signed certs. And then I'll remind you all that Elasticsearch is what OpenMetadata uses to index metadata to essentially power the UI. So in prior releases of OpenMetadata, it was necessary if you wanted to ingest metadata to run an ingestion workflow. And then as a following the documentation that we're looking at here, say, for example, for Redshift, and then in a separate step, run an Elasticsearch workflow that would index all of the updated entities, et cetera. In 0.7, we have made a convenience update that will, such that OpenMetadata will automatically index new metadata that's ingested. So it will recognize new entities or updated entities and index them, thus giving you access to them in the UI immediately. So as an example, I have a local deployment of the latest release of OpenMetadata running here, running on port 8585. So this is not the sandbox that I was looking at before, but this is a local deployment running in Docker. And I am going to use a Redshift deployment that I have access to, following these instructions to ingest metadata. And what we're going to do is watch as new tables appear in my local deployment. So the first thing I want to call out is that currently I've got 16 tables loaded here in 2 different services. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and ingest from this Redshift instance. And I have a config file for this instance on my local machine here. And we can now watch as those tables are added, as ingestion flows.
Awesome.
Tables are coming right in. I enjoyed this so much, I actually ran this a couple times today because I just enjoyed seeing those tables come in automatically. So, if we want to take a look at some of these, we can filter by Redshift and then, just dive in and take a look at what data was brought in.
Can you quickly go to the activity feed? It also should show you some activity, right, on what got ingested or something like that.
Not seeing that here. Is that because, well, it looks like it did finish.
Yeah.
So activity feed will not come for the created table because there will be a lot of noise. So we purposely chosen user-based activity.
So the bot-based activities are not shown, especially for ingestion, and then it's all user activity, right? That's how.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that is important for the community, we'll definitely can add that. That is there in the feed, but we just don't show it.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
What if I go in and add something to one of those tables? I went in and added a test description that does populate immediately.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. All right. Last thing I'd want to touch on is our list of new connectors. So in this release, we have added a number of connectors to the already large and growing list. We have a connector for Metabase, which is an open source business intelligence solution. We've added a connector for Apache Druid so that we can integrate Druid metadata. Added a connector for MLflow. MLflow is an open source platform for the machine learning lifecycle. Made a number of Glue improvements to extract metadata for tables and pipelines. The MS SQL connector now has SSL support. And finally, we've added connectors to import metadata from Apache Atlas and from Amazon. Okay, if you, with every release, we're adding to our list of connectors. If there's a connector you'd like to see that we don't already have, please file a ticket. Please file a GitHub issue in the OpenMetadata repo. And with that, I will turn it back to Harsha. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Shannon and Alberto. So yeah, that comprises all of our release in 2.7. Quite a bit of stuff coming in, especially with the feed and activity feeds. When we began OpenMetadata, we said data collaboration is one of the pillars that we want to address, and activity feed is like one step towards that direction. And we'll continue to evolve that and what that means for collaboration around metadata. So that will enrich and take just being metadata coming from systems to actually engaging your teams to actually enrich the metadata. Then obviously location improvements. want to look at your S3 location, S3 bucket where the data is coming from, it's right there in the open metadata. Similarly, DBT models, right? More and more teams are using DBT models. Now you can actually look at how the model is being, how the table is being generated through the DBT model, right within open metadata, and ever increasing number of connectors, so that the goal of the project is to centralize the metadata. So the one way to do is continue to build the connectors, and we are on it. So as Sharon said, any feature that if I want to have, I'm going to install open metadata. If I have this feature, please come to us, and we can prioritize that depending on community feedback and others. So that concludes 0.7 release kind of demo, as well as our overall focus towards this year. And going into next year, it will be great to hear from the community and see, how do you want to use open metadata and what are the features that you would like to see going forward. So yeah, I think that concludes our meeting as well. Anything else? Any questions?
Anything you want to talk about 0.8?
Yes. So we are publishing our roadmap, and till now we published till 0.8, and we're gonna kind of enrich for next few releases. Idea here is to kind of talk, put a roadmap for at least next 3 releases, 2 to 3 releases, showcase what we are building, get feedback from community, and kind of redo the roadmap based on the community needs and user needs. So what we are going to do in 0.8 is, the main thing is data quality. So data quality is again another pillar that we are looking at open metadata. So far what we have done is to do the profiling and provide those results within open metadata, so that you can see if there are any null values where the column shouldn't be null, if there are any duplicate values where the column should be duplicate, and so and so. So what we're going to do here with the data quality is to actually come up with a standard specification, as well as the APIs to capture how the test should be created, how the test definition should be captured per table, per column. And we're going to put that into open metadata and extend our profile to profiler to actually run tests based on these specs and APIs. So simple integration would be like, you can go to the profiler, look at the data that you have already, and start creating tests around, hey, this column is supposed to be not null. I'm going to put a test saying that anywhere null percentage is greater than 0.1, make the test fail and send me an alert. So we're going to start integrating, going towards that direction. And this will be built on top of change events and event notification. The great thing with that is, whenever the test fails, you can get a notification within your Slack channel, through email, or through PagerDuty. And this will actually be, revolutionary in terms of data quality implementation so far. Second thing is, there are access control policies questions coming around. We do have a authorizer right now, a pluggable authorizer. We specifically made it kind of an open-ended approach, such that anyone who has central policy manager, such as Apache Ranger, Sentry, or any other homegrown solutions, can integrate into it. So with access control policies, we're going to propose a design and take community approach. It won't be finalized for the 0.8 release, but we're going to put Aadhaar's kind of a simple implementation there, and see how do we evolve, what makes work for how it will work for the users, and get feedback on that. And the third one is the eventing webhook. So when we did the change eventing versioning, the idea here is to actually send these events into a third-party services. Example could be, there could be a Slack bot that is listening for webhook events. Whenever something changed, like activity feed, or test failing, or backward incompatible change happen to schema, we can take that event and notify based on the event type to different channels, to the owners of that entity itself. So there will be a lot richer integrations coming into the open metadata. So we will provide an eventing webhook as a first implementation. We're going to do a Slack bot, a simple Slack bot that can actually listen to these events and send it to a Slack channel. So once this is ready, you can actually install open metadata, send your metadata, continue to ingest the metadata into open metadata, and any changes like these will pop in your Slack channel. You can configure that with the open metadata. And lastly, connectors. We want to continue to invest in connectors. There are Delta Lake feature request added recently. We're going to look at that. Similar to that is Iceberg as well, and Power BI and Azure SQL. These are kind of high-level connectors that we're going to look at for the 0.8 release. Again, we are open to it. We can deprioritize and kind of take any connector that you are important for you. So please come to the community Slack channels or the GitHub issues and file a ticket for us. So that kind of wraps up for point 8. We'll definitely update the roadmap for next to release point 9, point 10, so that as a community overall we'll know what's coming, what we are working on, and definitely can shape the roadmap for us.
Yeah, that's great. Any questions?
So this release will be available tomorrow. So we'll do a release blog post along with release bits and hub gear path. All those notes will be available by tomorrow morning for you guys.
All right. Thank you guys for attending the meeting.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
and
Oh.
have a rest
Thank
of
you very
the
much.
holidays. Thank you everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye bye.